experts, and we'll start off with introducing them. And we're going to, after I introduce them, we're going to ask you to put your screen in the speaker view that can be found at the top of the screen. So we have Dr. Amy Fontenot. She's from Lafayette Parish, and she is a July 2020 graduate of the National Institute for School Leadership. Uh, Amy has served as a dedicated educator since 1997. She's been the homeless liaison for 8 years and 9 months. During this time, she's worked tirelessly and efficiently as a champion with her staff, serving families, students, and mentoring fellow liaisons. She's a member of the Homeless Advisory Council, and as was mentioned before, she was Louisiana's 2020 nominee for the Homeless Liaison of the Year nationally, and she was our Homeless Liaison of the Year for Louisiana. Aisha Buckner has been an advocate for children and youth in New Orleans all of her life. Her mom says since she was 8 years old. She's been an educator since 1992 and has been working as the homeless liaison in Orleans Parish since 2006. She's been working with homeless families since 1997 in Art Without a Roof summer camp. As a homeless liaison, her roles also includes parental involvement specialist and foster care point of contact. She's also a member of the Homeless Advisory Council and was the 2019 nominee for the Homeless Liaison of the Year nationally, and she was Louisiana's Homeless Liaison of the Year. Petree Walker has been an advocate and passionate about serving students and families experiencing homelessness for the last 24 years. She's currently the homeless coordinator and has a staff that consists of a homeless liaison, tutors, counselors, mental health counselors, and others trained in trauma-informed practices to treat the whole child. She has a special love for assisting unaccompanied homeless youth and families at risk. Prior to the pandemic, Caddo was one of the LEAs where students experiencing homelessness performed better than some of the regular students on standardized testing and math and reading. She is a member of the Homeless Advisory Council also. And as Dr. Hunter said, we're pleased to have a member of our national, a member from the National Center for Homeless Education, a program specialist, Kenya Haynes. She's an educator with 25 years. She joined NCHE in 2018 after 16 years at the Wyoming Department of Education, where she focused her energy on working with vulnerable student populations. During her tenure at the Wyoming Department of Education, she worked with homeless education, dropout prevention, juvenile justice, gender equity, civil rights, school accreditation, gifted and talented education, homeschooling, Title I, and the state system of support. She's honored to have served on the board of National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth, and as a liaison to the National Expert Panel for the Education of Children and Youth who are neglected, delinquent, or at risk. Growing up on a cattle ranch in Wyoming, Kenya knows how to build a barbed wire fence, but is glad she doesn't have to anymore. In her spare time, she sings in a choir, in a collegiate chorale, and in the Latin Scuola. A former kindergarten teacher, 5-year-olds are her favorite. So as we get ready to hear we have 7 questions that we're gonna focus on, and you'll be hearing some of them will be answered by multiple people from our panel, and some by just one. Again, I ask you to put your screens on the speaker view, and at the top of your screen, you'll see that where you can view the question and you can see the speaker at the same time. And now we'll start with our first question. And our first question says, what ways are you able to enroll and identify students during the pandemic? And Amy and Aisha will answer that question for us.
Okay, so this definitely has been a year to have to change and think out of the box and figure out how we're going to do this. And as Dr. Hunter and Laverne shared earlier, our numbers for identification are definitely down this year. We definitely do not have eyes on as many students as we did before, and that's always concerning. For our program, for our MV program here in Lafayette Parish, we did switch over to an online questionnaire, online application type system for MV, trying to reach more families, especially as we were in lockdown in our building and not allowing public in and into our offices and on school campuses. Our district as a whole switched over to more of an online system to do any type of registration, questionnaires, applications for assistance, anything like that with specialized departments. We've also been able to partner with our Child Welfare and Attendance Office this school year to implement a 30-day provisional enrollment for any students or any families that are missing documentation, needing homeless or foster or ESL or migrant support, any of those specialized divisions. We know that they're going to be missing paperwork and different things like that. So we were able to advocate for that with our Child Welfare and Attendance Office, where they issue that 30-day provisional, they immediately enroll the child, and then they direct that parent to whatever specialized program that they're needing. They make that referral to us, and then the parent is given 30 days to contact us, or we contact them, take care of what they're needing, provide whatever support, if it's documentation, whatever they need. That way the student is able to enroll immediately and begin their education while the parent is able to work with us and get that information. That has helped. We've also started a drop-off service at the school sites this year, as opposed to having all the families come here to get resources from us. We go out once or twice a week to the school sites to drop off what's needed with the guidance counselors, and then the parents are able to access that directly from the schools, just so that we've been able to reduce the amount of people here in our office, in our building, but then also trying to accommodate families who are having transportation issues and just fear of coming out into the public for whatever reason. Big thing for us this year, we were able to add 2 social workers to our federal programs team. So 2 social workers that are assisting our homeless program as well as our foster care program. And that has made all the difference with our outreach, with identification, with following up on students. Comes with a price tag, but it has absolutely been worth it. We've been able to support that through our Title I homeless set aside. And so that has been really beneficial to our outreach team. Another big thing that we did this year, our district, the homeless program and our foster care program joined the Unite Us platform for our state. And if you're not familiar with that, if you haven't even heard about that yet, you definitely want to check that out. So it's an electronic platform that when we have a family that needs assistance, we log in, parent gives us consent, we type them in as a new client, and we shoot out any resource that they're needing. And it's basically a check-off system. It's just check-off boxes on the screen. Do they need food? Do they need housing? Do they need clothing? Do they need medical? Whatever they're needing, it is basically check, 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 and you hit send. The referrals shoot out to all of those agencies that are on the platform. I think for our Region 4 area, we have something like 64 agencies on the Unite Us platform. And it has saved time with our program facilitators, our case managers, our social workers to have all of this in one location. So again, the name is Unite Us, 2 separate words, Unite Us. And very beneficial for our outreach. We're getting referrals from agencies that we would have never even known about. I absolutely recommend you to check that out for your area. We're also getting early childhood referrals from there, which is something new for us too. We've also increased our partnership with our Continuum of Care, our COC here in the Region 4 area. The two main agencies that deal with housing here in Lafayette Parish are for the Region 4 for our COC. They have partnered, tightened that partnership with us. So we have a phone number that we can automatically give to a family where they can get into emergency housing, which here in Lafayette, it has been hotel stays. And those two agencies are providing the funding for that for any family with children that need emergency housing. And when I say emergency, we have a family that's been there for about 8 months. So it's not just short-term housing, it is truly emergency housing. And then they have case managers and all kinds of housing specialists that work with the families while they're in the hotels to be able to get them into more permanent housing. So we have received referrals from them, but we have also made referrals right back out. So those are some of the ways that we've had to change how we identify and enroll this year. It has truly become a community effort with different agencies. And for the question that popped up about, is United free? Yes, it is a free platform. There is no charge associated with that. So that's what we're doing here this year in Lafayette due to different situations with the pandemic.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Well, this is Aisha, and I'm from Orleans Parish. And Orleans Parish is a different kind of animal. We only have one direct one school, the rest are all charters. And next year, we will have all charter schools. So we have a centralized enrollment process in Orleans Parish. So that means if you want to go to any school in Orleans Parish, you have to go through the centralized enrollment process, which worked well for us for COVID. Because we have 3 sites. I trained all 3 staffs on how to identify a homeless family via if they came in or virtually. So once they identify that a family is homeless, I'm notified that the family is homeless. I then notify the school that the family is homeless and they're coming and they're going to need certain services. So that was one thing that helped us with that. Also, we did when parents would pick up technology, we would have them complete the residency form there on the spot and also give them literature to take with them to read or pass along to their friends or whomever. We also had teachers when they would call home to check, our teachers would call in all of their students just to do a check-in. And I asked them to do ask the parents, what were your needs? So you can kind of see what the needs assessments were without being like, are you homeless or things like that. So you could be sensitive to the needs of the parents. We also, we gave out literature to parents when they picked up food, breakfast or lunch. So we tried to just overload them with information. And I also partner with our truancy center, so that's the first ones that usually get flagged. So I partner with them, work with them. I go out with them on site visits to see what's going on with our homeless population. And I also work closely with our COC, Unity of Greater New Orleans, which is regional. So I partner with the COC and our truancy center and with our enrollment process. And that really helped us. Our numbers are still low. Don't get me wrong, they're still low, but it did help us identify identify more of our homeless populations. And that's what we did in Orleans Parish.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And for next question number 2, we're going to have Amy, Kenya, and Petree, and they're going to be answering how are you meeting the needs of students that are virtual.
Okay, so I guess I'll go first. So first and foremost, we have definitely, it has been a challenge because our most vulnerable population, we really did not want them to go virtual. We really would like them to be face-to-face. And so it has been a challenge trying to keep schooling consistent for the most vulnerable populations in a virtual setting, as you very well know. Our first priority was to make sure that we had devices, hotspots, headphones with microphones, all of those types of things that our students would need. We also are doing weekly check-ins. My social workers for our Office of Federal Programs, we call it OFP, our social workers do weekly check-in on all of our virtual students that are in homeless and foster care. And it's basically a temperature check. Are you logging in okay? Is everything going okay? Were you able to submit? Is the hotspot working okay? Do you need a different one? Are your headphones working? Are you having any issues academically? Because we have two separate virtual options for students here in Lafayette Parish. We have Lafayette Online Academy, which we call LOA, and that is its own school site with one counselor that services the entire population of that school, which in our case was about 7,000 students at that one school. And then we have our Team Virtual, which we call Team V, which is online through a particular school. So whatever school you were zoned for, you can do online through that particular school, where there's a teacher at the campus that's assigned to you, as well as a counselor at the campus that facilitates all of your online experience. So you have more support through Team V than you do through LOA, but our social workers are still doing the weekly check-in on both situations, just to make sure if we're having any logistic issues with our kids for the technology piece, but then also following up with their guidance counselors, making sure that they're getting support or whatever they need, or contacting LOA to see if they can assign a teacher for support. And then our special education department, about, I guess, maybe December, started transitioning all of our SPED students that were on virtual, transitioning them back to face-to-face because they were really just seeing some need there. So a good bit of our students have transitioned back to face-to-face. I think that I'm probably still at around 200 or 300 students that are virtual. And so we're still trying to accommodate that and making sure that they're getting some support. It has been a challenge with trying to provide tutoring in a virtual setting, just because our district is so large and spread out. So we are definitely still working on that and trying to get ideas from different districts about how they're doing that. We've also had to provide transportation for all of our virtual students that need to get to tutoring sites and different things that we're offering. We make sure that that transportation is up and running and available to the families. And then also through our social worker check-ins, we're doing all of the referrals that the families might need, because we do not have eyes on these students regularly. The phone call, the check-in that they're doing with them, we're able to make referrals for outside services in that setting. So it has been a challenge, but that's what we're doing here in Lafayette.
Okay, thank you. Kenya?
All right, thank you, everybody. I want to begin just by thanking Antigua and her team at LDOE for the invitation to participate today. I do want to point out that the information I share with you, even though I am representing NCHE and we do provide technical assistance from the U.S. Department of Education, that the things that I mentioned today are not in any way requirements of the law. These are just some practices from around the country that people have been trying and have found some success with. Anything I share with you today, don't think, oh my gosh, this is something I need to do. This is just an idea to give you something to percolate on. And so in terms of meeting the needs of students that are virtual, there are a few things that I have heard about as I have worked with communities around the country that I thought I would share. And one is specifically for unaccompanied homeless youth who may be more isolated during this time, especially if they're in a virtual setting. And we have seen that there are some districts where they've actually set up kind of a virtual office hours period, kind of like a drop-in time, where a teacher or counselor, caseworker will be available to students and just have like an open room, and then they can drop in if it's convenient. And just talk about whatever is on their mind. And so they've been setting that up weekly for people. We also have seen one innovative approach in suburban Chicago. The school district there, the state actually used CARES Act funds to set up some academic navigators. And what these individuals are doing is that they're actually helping to locate those lost students. Everybody's talked a lot about how their numbers are lower this year. And in some cases that might be because of eviction moratoria that have postponed homelessness. But these individuals are actually have access to state data websites where they're looking to see if students have enrolled other places. If they haven't, they're actually engaging in some tracking down of families. And so That has been helpful, as well as connecting young people to different academic resources or even community partners that might provide some other supports. And like Amy mentioned with her check-ins where they're doing it weekly, there are some other programs that are similar. In Phoenix, there is a school doing what they're calling Every Student Every Day. And every adult in the system is assigned about 20 students, and their responsibility is to check in with them every day just to see how they're doing and what their needs are. And similarly, we see that there are some school districts that are doing that outreach, but they're not focusing on academic needs. What they're in fact doing is just checking in to see what those non-academic needs are. How are you doing? Are there resources that you need? And what they're finding is that those conversations that don't have to do with, you know, is your student logging in? Is your homework done? Those kind of compliance types of calls, but just, hey, we're concerned about you. What do you need? Or they're actually building a lot of trust with families, and that those families who are getting those types of calls are staying much more engaged with the school system in this virtual setting than those families who are not. And just one other kind of a quick thing just to think about, as students are spending more time virtually on their computers, it's also a good idea just to send some reminders to parents and students about online safety and different risks with being online. And so that's another thing that we're seeing districts engage in. And I will pass it on to Petree.
Good morning, everyone. We are providing services for students that are virtual. We have tutors that have been assigned to schools that are actually logging on with the students on their Canvas. Our IT department gave us access to be able to be in the classroom while the student is in the classroom, so that we can hear the skills that are being taught in the way that the teacher is teaching it, so then we can log on with them through Zoom later to help them with any assignments that they may be missing or did not understand during their time. We also have check-ins just about every day. Some students we are online every day with, some students twice a week. So we have about 5 tutors that are making sure that they are staying on task, that they're understanding. We communicate with the schools, the counselors, and the teachers regarding the students to make sure that all assignments are being submitted like they're supposed to be submitted in the different formats. We also have each student has a Gmail account, so we're able to log in through Zoom, and we send them a link through Zoom to work with us. And we're working during the school day, in the afternoons, and on Saturdays with students. If we have any children that are at the shelter because of virtual, we're actually going to the shelter and working with those students to help them to get caught up with assignments that they are missing. We're monitoring grades bi-weekly. The counselors, the mental health persons are really looking at grades to see if there are assignments or projects that they were not able to complete because they did not have the materials. So we're working with the schools to get the materials to them to be able to complete it with assistance if they need it. So basically that's how we are here in Caddo.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to question 3, even though it's not up on the board. The next question is about mental health services and what are some different ways that schools are meeting those needs during the pandemic. And I've got a couple, and one I would like to point out is something that Amy mentioned, I think back at the beginning, kind of one of the first questions, in how they increase the number of social work staff that they have in their district. And that's something that we're seeing around the country. I think very early in the pandemic, there was as budgets were crunching and people were kind of panicking, they were laying off students. Some of the support staff, social work, school counselors were some of the first to be let go. And we found that that really was detrimental to our students and families and staff. And so people are kind of reversing that now. They're bringing on additional staff, not only because of the impacts of the pandemic, where students may have seen their family members lose jobs or be laid off, where they might have experienced a number of deaths in their community, but also just because of some of the unrest that has happened in the country over the last year as well, and helping young people respond to those different challenges. We're also beginning to see an increase in the use of telehealth for schools. And so that's one option. Florida is a state in particular that had some state funding for some mental health grants that they converted to telehealth funds. And so that has been one tool that has been successful for some people. And there are a lot of resources, I think, that are available around social emotional learning and response to trauma. One organization I would recommend that did a lot of work during the pandemic is CASEL, C-A-S-E-L, and I'll write it in the chat. But their website has a number of resources and webinars that you can view that have ideas specifically on supports in that area. And I would encourage you, as we're talking about the supports for students, not to forget that your staff also needs that support, because this has been a challenging year for all of us. And I believe it was Yale University did a study at the beginning of the pandemic where they were interviewing teachers and staff about the stress that they were feeling at the end of last school year. And they had expected that when they repeated that survey in the fall, people would have had some time to kind of recover and get better, but they found that the stress level had not dropped over the summer at all, that people were just as stressed at the beginning of this school year as they were at the end of the last school year. And so we really need to make sure that we're supporting our adults, because you just can't pour from an empty cup. So make sure that you're including your staff members as you do this response.
Kenya, that's a good point about the staff, you know, because that is definitely so many changes all at once, dealing with our own personal things going on, as well as trying to manage all of the students and their issues. So that's a good point. Like I mentioned earlier, our biggest improvement of what we've done for mental health is to add those 2 social workers. They are not only guiding us with how to better manage and handle and what to do with our students, but they have also taken on a big piece of the support for our students. Our district does not allow our mental health professionals to do Zoom or Google Meet for our students due to HIPAA restraints. So we're having to be creative of how we're reaching out to do mental health support with our students in a virtual setting. We are allowed, and in our district, our social workers can go out to the school sites to meet with students. So we've had to be strategic. And they are doing their weekly check-ins on all of their caseload with our students. We have implemented more of a PLC situation in our district for our homeless team this year. And so every 2 weeks we are looking at data, whether it's mental health data, whether it's academic, attendance, discipline, whatever. And as a team, we're a team of 7 people. As a team, we're deciding what we need to do, how to make referrals out, to do more timely decisions and timely discussions, hoping to impact everything around. So our social workers are doing the weekly check-in. For their caseloads that are on virtual, they're having to do everything through the phone. For their caseloads that are actually in face-to-face setting, they are able to go out to the school site to do the weekly meetings with them. During the phone check-ins, we're also using our school counselors for any new concerns, new issues that are happening in between our 2-week check-in as a team. So we've really had to engage our school counselors, of the school social workers, our Office of Federal Programs social workers, our MV team, really taking that whole community approach to be able to have all hands on deck for anything that comes up along the way, because there are so many mental health pieces that are impacting academics. The attendance, I'm sure, is not just my district, but it is not uncommon for us to see kids that are missing 30, 40, 50 days. They've been on quarantine 3 times. You know, they're missing academics, there's stress going on at home. And so there's so many things going on that are getting in the way. Those basic needs are definitely getting in the way right now, you know, having to Maslow before we bloom. And so definitely the addition of 2 social workers, and I'm hoping to add a 3rd one next year. So that's kind of what we're doing for mental health right now.
Okay, I'm back. I'm Petree. This past summer, we implemented a virtual summer camp. And kind of at the last minute, maybe a month or 2 before the summer started, because we were noticing that some of our kids were losing skills academically. So we kind of bridged the gap in education during our summer program. We had about 250 students that participate. Usually with our traditional camp, we have over 500. So the numbers were not as large as they have been in the past, but we felt like 250 was a good number for virtual. Usually we start at 8 in the morning for our traditional. Well, with the virtual concept, we started at 10 to give them time to get up, get prepared. We gave each student a Chromebook to use. The coordinator sent out the Zoom link for each grade. So each student had a teacher, and we tried to keep the numbers 10 to 15 in the classroom. But in the mornings, they participated academically with some fun activities, with math and reading, science experiments, a lot of history, learning the history of Louisiana, of the United States, but they did it in a fun way where kids were really engaged in the activities. In the afternoons, and I didn't know this, we had some very creative teachers that were able to even do field trips, virtual. And they went to the airport, they participated with the zoo, the bowling alley, the art museum, they went to a bakery, they had a farm where they were able to see all the animals and kind of talk about it. We also still had our music where kids were able to learn some keyboard skills where he would do on YouTube and teach them some skills on the books. We also had health and fitness, so we didn't forget the health and fitness part where they were able to do exercises. We had breaks throughout the day. They had 2 breaks and a lunch break where they were able to go and sign back, well, keep the computer up, but go and have lunch. We provided snacks for them. We took it to the school. They would pick up their snacks on Thursdays and were able to have their snacks for the rest of the week. I hope they saved them and didn't eat them all on the weekends, but we did provide a snack every day for them to be able to participate in the breaks as well. We had a STEM lab experience, music and keyboarding, like I said, a career. We had different people to come in and talk about their careers with students. We did like an inventory of what they wanted to do when they grow up or they're an adult. And so we had some different people, a doctor, a lawyer, a judge, come in and talk about their experiences and where they were in education and where they are today and who influenced them to continue their path on doing what they wanted to do. We also had, I call it yoga. So they had some meditation time. We did have our mental health support during this time where they were able to they did an assessment at first to kind of see where the kids were, but then they did some fun activities with them that didn't sound like a counseling session, but it was fun for the kids to participate. And we were able to gather some information on where they were. We were concerned about kids being in the house that amount of time, and especially those that we possibly suspect child abuse may have been going on. So we were happy to see them during the summer so that we could see that they were okay. Because when you're not going into activities, you're not going to church, you're not going to the malls, you're not going to the stores, and you're not going to schools, we were really concerned. We did a lot of calling. The whole time that we were out virtually, we did a lot of calling and keeping up with our students and still providing all of our housing supports as well as our tutoring services. I think that's about it. But like I said, I was very encouraged, especially when they went to a zoo in Minnesota and was able to tour. So there was some activities that kids had never, I mean, if they lived to go to Minnesota to see it, but they were able to see it, you know, online, and it didn't cost us anything. We were very creative. So that was our summer. And this summer we're planning, but most of them want to be back traditionally. If we have students that want to stay virtual, we're going to provide devices for them to be able to log into the classroom with the other students that are actually traditional. And hopefully we'll be back to field trips this summer.
Okay, Petree, I'm a little jealous. I didn't do a summer program last year, and it was the first time in, I guess, what, 20 years we didn't have one in the district. And I was like a duck out of water. But this year we are doing summer programs. Some of our schools are doing Saturday programs. Some are going to do in-person virtual. But at the district, I think we're going to focus on the shelters, going into the shelters, because we do have about 5 family shelters in Orleans Parish. And the kids have been in these shelters for extended time. So I think having some people go into the shelters and work with them would be a good relief for them and for parents. And during that time, we're also going to work on, you know, parenting skills with the parents. And it is going to be a theme-based. So I'm looking forward to that because I love the summers with my babies. You know, this job affords me the opportunity to be with children year round, but the summer is nothing like being with them from 7 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. So I'm looking forward to that this summer. Tutoring. Some of our schools, they do Saturday tutoring, after school tutoring, and so most of them have embedded tutoring during the school day. So they're doing it on elective hours, after school, lunch breaks, things like that. Some schools have even purchased software so that kids that are doing virtually or those who are in person can still work on them if they're at home. Some have purchased Lexia for reading intervention and Dreambox for math intervention. But that's what we're doing in the district right now for tutoring and summer programs. So I'll keep you posted on our summer program when we meet again.
I forgot about our tutoring program. We are providing tutoring this year, and all schools are doing it traditionally. So we're doing it between 3:30 and 5:30 every day.
That's good.
They have, we have 5 sites, and they are really engaging in activities, and we're providing the snacks, of course, for them.
Okay. And I'd like to say one thing about the mental piece also before I get kicked off right quick. This is something that as adults we're experiencing with children at the same time. So, you know, we're all having issues. So every Monday I send out to my my social workers, it's Healthy Mondays. It gives them things for mental health, physical health, and also eating better. So, you know, I'm trying to also, you know, because everybody's going through the same thing, just different processes, different steps, different stages. But we're all going through some things right now, and we all have to be healthy to take care of ourselves and do our jobs properly.
Thank you. And so next, we're going to talk a little bit about professional development to assist families during the pandemic. And one of the things that I just wanted to kind of point out to everybody is that in this transition from physical environment to a virtual environment, it's actually opened up a lot of training opportunities that people wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So I'm trying to have a little bit of a positive spin on it. You know, we found that the trainings can be more flexible. They've been less expensive. In some cases, as things have gone virtual, people have even had their events for free, their conferences for free. You don't need to travel. And so in some of the states where I'm working, we've actually seen a great increase in the number of people who are actually attending trainings compared to before the pandemic. And it allows you to access more out-of-state resources as well. One thing that I would suggest is, you know, as we are doing this work, as we're looking at how best to support families, not only looking at how do we just handle the technological end of this, but what are those ways that we can address social emotional needs, which I mentioned kind of in the mental health question. And so I've put in the chat the link to castle.org, but I think there are a lot of materials that are out there and available. And you know, at this point we're in March, so we're actually already kind of turning the quarter to the end of this, you know, 2021 school year. And what I would encourage you to do is to already start thinking about the fall. And you know, one of the things I read very early in the pandemic is this idea of, you know, in the rush to get back to normal, let's make sure we know what parts of normal are worth going back to. So that, what are some of the things that you can do with your staff to talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what are some lessons we learned that we can take forward, and what are some things that we can modify, and how do we address some of the learning loss that we might have seen with all of the higher absenteeism, with just the lower interaction in the virtual environment, and how are we going to plan for that so that we're not sitting around in late July and August when people who are maybe in 9-month contracts are coming back and we're trying to rush to put something together. How can we effectively use this time right now to look forward and plan for next year? And so that's what I'm going to kind of push for people is what are the lessons we can learn that we can take forward and really make the 21-22 school year just magnificent.
Me, I'm up again. Okay. Okay, PD, that's me, yes. If any of you have ever asked a principal to be on the agenda for PD, you know you've gotten strange looks like, ah. So what I did, you know, I finagled through the principals to give me 30 minutes for their first PD. And then after that, give me 5 to 10 minutes, or a person from the staff 5 to 10 minutes to just do McKinney-Vento blurps. You know, so that way, you know, you're honoring your contract with the principal, but you're also empowering the staff to deal with our families and their needs. So like I said, get in with your principals, ask for like 30 minutes for the first PD. And then for all the previous PDs, we call them McKinney-Vento blurps. You know, like one, they may cover unaccompanied youth, or they may just give you what homeless definition, sheltered, unsheltered, things like that. But just between 5 to 10 minutes at each PD, just to keep McKinney-Vento fresh in everybody's head, so they can know that maybe this child may be a McKinney-Vento child, you know, maybe a flag up in the air. But that way you are still empowering your staff, and, you know, you're helping our families in the process. That's it. Oh, and we also did McKinney-Vento org for all of our schools. So that means the school staff can also be trained, not just the homeless liaison at each school site. The entire school staff can be trained.
Okay, so this is a question about, you know, how are we preparing for our students who are 100% virtual? How am I preparing to get them to take the standardized assessments at a school site? As if you remember, I explained we have 2 different virtual options here in Lafayette Parish. So my LOA kids, the Lafayette Online Academy, I've been in discussions with both groups of people trying to figure out for almost a month now how to accommodate this. So the LOA staff, they are doing just a centralized location that I have to provide transportation. I have 56 kids that are in that program. So I have to provide transportation, different grade levels, it's different days, different times of the day, different days of the week, different weeks of the month, beginning April and May. So just trying to coordinate of when those kids need to have transportation to get back and forth. And we're having to be creative because the Team V kids, those that are virtual but through their zone school, they can test at their school site. They are living in that school zone. However, because of COVID capacity on the buses, transportation already had cap limits on each of those school buses. So to put my 150 kids on those buses, it would push us over COVID capacity. So we have a whole nother issue with trying to figure out how to transport the Team V kids to their actual school site to get their state assessments done. And then again, because they were virtual, you know, they didn't have uniforms, they didn't have backpack school supplies, they didn't have meals at the school site, and the school site is providing the meals and the snacks and all those kinds of things. And so as a staff, we're having to figure that out for all 200 of those kids that are going out to different sites to test during those 2 months. So I'm really looking to other districts to figure out how are they managing this. I did speak with Aisha yesterday about this in Orleans, and she gave a suggestion that they are tossing around the idea of doing Saturday testing to be able to accommodate schedules and, you know, not mess with capacities and all kinds of things. And so I'm really interested to hear and learn from other school districts of what are their thoughts of how they're going to manage this, if they've even thought of it yet. Because for us, we have to have a request in for transportation at least 3 weeks in advance if we're going to need school buses, if I'm going to need arranged cabs, and work with caregivers to make sure they're getting in the cabs and that they're, you know, just all kinds of things. And so that has been a challenge for us. Also, making sure the kids that are going to the school sites have everything they need to be able to walk onto that school campus, like, you know, mask and hand sanitizer, all the PPE that is needed that they didn't have because they weren't attending our schools right now. And in addition to the uniforms and backpacks and school supplies that they need. And then also providing a bag of books that they need to read during downtime because they're not bringing, they don't have all that in their desk because they don't have a desk at school. So it's really been a challenge trying to figure out where these kids going to test. Starting to get a little nervous as that date is approaching to make sure we've thought of everything. But if anybody else has ideas of how they're going to do that, I would love for you to send me an email, share anything in chat, because I just want to make sure I've thought of everything. But those are the things that we're working on right now for those students needing to get to a school site for state assessments.
Okay, and the last question is about tracking and retrieving all of the various electronic devices, tablets, hotspots, and things that students have as they're moving in and out of the district. And one thing that I would just like to point out, as we have these students who are being highly mobile, more so during the pandemic than in other times, they still have that right to school of origin. And so in a lot of cases, as they're moving from district to district, they're staying enrolled in virtual education at whatever school site it was that they were in when the pandemic began. In fact, I've seen a lot of cases where students have left the state and are still attending virtual classes at their school that they, their school of origin. And so that is a possibility. And another thing that I would just encourage you to do, you know, we know that because of the mobility, because of sometimes the crowded living situations, that these students are perhaps more prone to losing items or damaging items than other students, regardless of the cost of the item, whether it's a library book or a tablet. And so what a lot of school districts are doing is insuring those devices so that if they're lost or broken, the burden of that cost doesn't become something that goes to those families and those young people who probably don't have the resources to replace them. And so that is something that I would encourage you to consider if you haven't already done that. And also make sure that you have a consistent policy for lost materials and devices, and that it specifically addresses the needs of McKinney-Vento students. And so those are a couple of things that I would point out. And I think Aisha is also going to talk a little bit more specifically about that.
Yes, this is difficult for us. Now the tracking is fine, but it's the retrieving that we're having problems with. You know, because our families are so mobile. And most of our schools, they do have the insurance policy for the computers. And our McKinney-Vento families are not taxed with, you know, replacing items or anything like that. But what our schools are doing when the families do not, if they leave the district or leave the school, if they do not return the technology, the schools have embedded something in the computers where they can turn them off. So that means, you know, if you don't return it, it can't be used. And a screen will pop up telling you that you can call this number so that the computer can be retrieved and things like that. Some parents do call and let us know that, hey, you can come get the computer. Some do not. But the best way that our schools have found is just to shut them down when they're not being in use for the school. And this is really hard, you know, because, you know, sometimes it may be the only access they have to the outside world. You know, and if we're turning it off because they're no longer in our school, you know, so I'm stuck, you know. I understand that you have to because it's designed for their school, for educational things, but also it's the way to connect, especially during these times, you know. But I understand policy, and I do understand policy. Try to enforce the policy, but that's about it.
Yes, and I think one thing that brings up too, as students are mobile, you know, even if they stay enrolled in the school of origin, you might communicate with the families if you know that they're moving ahead of time for some reason, and communicate with that receiving school and see if they can provide the laptop or the hotspot, you know, just like you would split transportation. Again, this isn't something that's required, but there might be some ways that you could work together so that you don't have that equipment leaving the geographic area as the students leave.
And by us having a centralized enrollment process, we can see when they transfer from one school to the other school. So we do that. Is when they leave the district, you know, we can't lay eyes or hands on them, but as long as they stay within the district, we can see where they transfer to. So that's how, you know, so we're finding ways to get around things. We're finding ways to get around things.
Okay, we want to thank our panel for all the wonderful answers, and if they
Vern, I believe you're muted.
I'm sorry. I was just saying we want to thank our panel for all the wonderful answers. If your question didn't get answered, we will make sure that you get an answer later, because we will send out all the questions and answers from our chat box at a later date when we send out the presentation and the recording from our Zoom today. Thank everybody for your participation. Thank our panelists. Thank you for all the wonderful suggestions and answer to our questions. It is lunchtime, but I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Hunter before we dismiss.
Yes, thanks to all.